Test. Okay, I'm ready.
Cool. All right. Hitting record. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Epic Meta Podcast. George, how's it going?
It's going fine. How are you?
Good. Got my coffee. It's starting to wake up here, so we're good to go. I'm gonna let you open this episode because we shifted and changes plans. Usually we cover something like a novel, a movie, but we are I guess evolving and winding down and moving forward. We'll see, but the plan for this episode is different. So I'll have you do the opening.
Okay, so the topic for this episode is to address the question, should we continue with this podcast? And the reason why this came up was basically, from my perspective, it's in reaction to our last podcast, which seemed lackluster on a number of levels. I think both of us were not too into it. Specifically, I can point to it didn't seem like you had even watched the episodes that we were reviewing. I mean, you had.
Yeah, that's wrong. First, but that's fine. That's your impression, but that's fine.
I think you've watched them in the past, but not in preparation for the episode.
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay.
I've definitely watched it in preparation for the episode. So, regardless of how it come across, I did watch the episodes again.
Okay, my mistake then. That's just the impression I got. But also, I don't know. It just the overall energy just seemed not there. And I brought up to you, I posed the question to you, should we continue? And you seemed ready to not continue.
Mm-hmm.
So, that suggests to me that at this point, maybe the podcast has run its course in terms of its value to the both of us. Or maybe we're just not doing it in a way that is keeping our interest. So whatever the answer is, I'd like to explore that question in today's podcast.
Cool.
And I don't want to give you the impression that, I'm accusing you of anything. That's not, this podcast is about a synergy between the two of us. So if one of us is not feeling it,
mm-hmm.
Then, we either need to change something so that we are both feeling it or we, can agree to end it. It's not, there's nothing saying we have to keep doing this if we're not enjoying it.
And that's the other problem. Like you said last episode, there was not a lot of energy, and that's because we didn't have a lot of energy. I don't know why we keep the schedule we keep because it didn't make any sense to me. Especially coming off of the conversation with Scott, which I thought was, very productive and very good. I don't understand why we need to do weekly when our production, isn't as good. And then our topic isn't as interesting as conversations like Scott. So I thought that, if we are to continue this at all, then we need to do it in such a way that, it's not based on any kind of crazy schedule. It's not like, we have thousands of people listening. We need to keep pushing out. We need to deliver. That's unrealistic, especially with all potential mistakes and I guess lag in regards to timeline from recording to publishing. There's a lot of little tiny pieces that the technical isn't that crazy. It's the fact that if you want high end production, you have to listen to the recording again. And I made the mistake of reviewing everything except the last little piece, and you can see it when you listen to it. So that piece along with everything else comes with a certain value, like a certain level of production value. And if you want to keep that, in my opinion, the schedule need to be flexible with that, because things happen and life happens, and this is not our like primary thing. We have jobs and stuff like that,
Yeah.
so it's very hard to keep it up
Well,
when the schedule is very constant.
yeah,
Yep.
no, I agree with that. It seems to me like you're suggesting that it was my doing to encourage our, rate of
I say
production.
I say it's both, right? Because
Mm,
I definitely agree to it. And if we don't feel inclined to cover stuff like, so that's the other thing. Like, if we can't come up with a topic, we shouldn't force it, right? And
mhm,
I think it was not just the last episode. There's one or two where you regard to as filler episode, and it's like you shouldn't refer to our podcast as a filler episode as if it's not good enough for you to do it. It's like Toastmaster when you say sorry during your speech. It's for you to like not degrade, but like make it categorize it as an episode that's not interesting will definitely affect how the listeners receive that show. Like, if you don't enjoy it, we shouldn't even publish it to begin with. So
mm,
that's my take on it. So it's like I said, like this is like you said, it should be fun and enjoyable. If you don't enjoy it, let's just not do it. And we're not the only one. I was listening to Freakonomics or any other better production. They said, of all the shows you listen to, every show that we hear or that I listen to, there are 4 or 5 that don't get published. They go on a library backlog or something. But that's their full-time job. They have like teams and tons of time to research and all this stuff. So it's like we're not the only one that only should put out certain episodes. Now, if we go and define it better, and let's say it's a you know conversation kind of podcast where everything should be on the board and everything should be an episode, well then we can go that way. But
what do you mean by that?
so, for example, if you compare like a show like Freakonomics to, I don't know, like any comedians I listen to, it's not very well produced. It's just them talking to their friends and BSing for 3 hours. And that's a show. And that's fine because that's their show, that's their format. But I think we have a problem because we haven't defined ourselves as to what kind of show we are. Now, if we say, every week we can just have a conversation, and it doesn't matter if we talk about a TV show or not, it can just be anything, and that's the show, well, then I have no problem pushing out that quality. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter what it is, it just should never be referred to as a filler episode, as if we're not interested in doing it.
Well, I
So
get
that's,
that.
yeah.
I hear your reaction to that.
Hmm.
That you were turned off by me saying that. I mean, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. It was meant to be humorous.
Okay.
It wasn't meant to be insulting. Um, but there is some truth to it. I mean, it did feel like, I don't know. There's other episodes where I've felt like we really created something interesting, and then
Hmm.
there were other episodes that didn't feel that way, and the last episode was certainly one of them. Now, I get what you're saying in terms of, we don't need to keep putting out episodes if we don't really have something that we're not necessarily passionate about, but have a certain level of interest in. I agree with
Hmm.
that, and I don't know that I've ever pushed us to keep up a schedule that where we felt like we had to keep producing things that we weren't interested in. That was never my intention. So if I gave
Yeah.
you that impression, let me correct that right now. I don't feel that way. I don't think we should. So I think we're in
Yeah.
agreement there. Uh, However, if we're not putting something out with a certain amount of regularity, so it doesn't have to be every week, but there needs to be some level of regularity. I think otherwise we'll just lose interest completely, and we'll just end where we.
Yeah.
So there's a tension there. There has to be some. We have to. It can't just be whether we feel like it. there has to be a little bit more driving us than that. And that will push us in certain instances to create something that we wouldn't have otherwise created. But we don't want to be putting out fluff. So I mean, I agree. I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah, and it's like that's the thing, right? I mean, we like this conversation to me is uninteresting, but from a standpoint of podcasting, it is interesting.
What
But
conversation
you
is
don't hear
uninteresting?
this right here when we talk about basically planning, pre-show. All this stuff is about podcasting in and of itself. However, if you coming from an aspect of what it takes to make a podcast, how it works, what kind of things you need to do before and after, then it is very interesting because you don't hear about this from like a podcast I listen to. You don't hear about like all the work they have to do. I'm not interested in all the work they have to do. I'm interested in the topic they're discussing that day or that show. And so
I think it's
when
interesting.
we
I think it's interesting to. I mean, we
for
are a meta
because
podcast, so we're a podcast
right.
about podcasting. I mean, so I think that's very in line with what we set out to do from the beginning.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, I don't think we ever, from episode one, had a good, come to a good, at least for me, come to a good understanding or definition of what we should do. We narrow down to certain things or certain elements, but it's never consistent enough, right? So when it's
I
when
don't
it's
agree
not
with that,
consistent,
by the way. But finish your thought.
okay. Well, because like I said, when it's not consistent enough, then things get astray, and then things become uninteresting, and that's um, when we have different expectations. Like right now, look, the fact that you disagree with me means that we have different definitions already, and different expectation and different understanding. And I think from any other show, these problems also come up, but they have much like this is their full time job. They actually take time to actually have meetings, discussions, all the stuff that we don't do
Mhm.
until we do the show, like right now, that you don't see when you listen to another podcast or watch something else. All that stuff that happens before and after and during, because those people have full time jobs in doing that, and so all that stuff all those kinks get worked out versus us where we have to work out the kinks very slowly, and I think that's gonna take time. And to me, it's not fun because it's work. so,
Well, but the
so
show
yeah,
is us working out those kinks.
I don't think I liked that concept as much as I like talking about sci-fi or interviewing Scott or talking about other things that
Well,
we enjoy.
when we talked to Scott, I mean, we talked about how his podcast and his podcast was a vehicle for self exploration, and that felt right to me. I felt like that's what we're doing here too, in a sense. Not exactly how he was doing it, but we're doing it in our own way. I think that has been the consistent line from episode one. We've been trying to figure out. We've been using it as a vehicle of self exploration through the process of figuring out what it takes to podcast. That's interesting.
I mean,
to
some
me.
of that has to be done. I mean, period. Whether you enjoy talking about that or not is basically that's in and of itself like a part of it.
Mhm.
But making it as a primary focus, to me, I rather enjoy talking about the other stuff we talked about, like movies and comic books and things that affect humanity on a greater scope. To me, that's the meta aspect of it. Things that go beyond just normal
Well, they both
daily
are.
lives.
They both are. I mean,
Both
we've
are,
had
yeah.
episodes we've had many episodes where we dealt with movie reviews or book reviews and that sort of thing. And we've had other episodes that dealt with what are we doing here on the podcast and who's our target audience. I thought those were, and I think you agreed that those were like the really interesting episodes.
To us, but not to like a show, right? Like from a standpoint of a listener, I wouldn't want to listen to those. So I see
Well,
both sides.
you've
Like,
never really expressed interest in making this show about, you know, appealing to an audience. Like every time I've ever brought up that subject, you've always brushed it off as not important, or at least that's my impression.
no, I think I miss. See, that's the other thing. Like, not doing this as a full time job, not allowing us to be in the same space to actually work and communicate. That's the other problem. It's like what I say, you take differently, and maybe I'm bad at communicating. And that's the other thing. It's very difficult to communicate already face to face versus communicating through the internet and then chatting doesn't help. But when you cover the statistics, my response to that isn't that I don't care about how the audience intercept or review or understand the show. It's more about those statistics doesn't reflect that. So until you can talk to an audience member themselves and say, should we go and talk about humanity in regards to science fiction and only science fiction and dedicate the entire show to that, or should we talk about podcasting also and all the things that we do, and then they respond to it, then yes, that's a response. But looking at statistic and views and downloads and all this stuff doesn't mean what it means, and that is just like an indication of interest. But that's it. We have no idea of what is interesting to an audience unless they actually write it out and respond to you verbally.
Right, but we haven't communicated with our audience on that level. We haven't gotten that sort of feedback yet. So not having that, the only thing we have to go by is the raw data of the engagement. So I mean,
I get
what you're saying, that you can't, just because someone viewed our podcast for like 20 seconds doesn't really mean anything. But I mean, it means that at the very least it showed up on their feed, which is interesting to me. I mean, but I get what you're saying, that it's not like real engagement, but it's also interesting in and of itself.
Sure. And to you.
Well, okay. If you don't.
Because here's the thing. I don't know if, and that's the other thing. Our lifestyle is so different that when we talk about podcasting or something like that, I think for the long term we have to come to an alignment. Like maybe, like the schedule you said, maybe once a month or 2 times a month. I think makes it a little bit more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And also the topic and focusing. To me, we need to focus. Otherwise, I lose track, and I don't think it's relevant to the podcast because our definition are not the same.
Focusing?
So, like, we have a filler episode last time, you said.
Yeah.
But to me, that was on point because we were talking about, science fiction and humanity, and the expands cover all of that. Whether our energy was good enough, the topic was on point. But if you don't think it's
to me because. Hey, you expressed that, like, you lost patience with my recapping of previous episodes. But to me, that's important. I think we need to lay out the framework of what we're going to talk about. I mean, I know you say that the audience, if they're listening to the episode, then they would have watched the show. So therefore, we don't need to recap the episodes. But I think we do need to recap the episodes, if only that it sets it in our mind what we're talking about. So there's like little things like that where we're not in alignment, or we're not respecting each other's position sufficiently to create something that's, I don't know, interesting, that is ultimately interesting for someone else to listen to.
Right. How we do the episode is different. The topic though was that to me it's on point. But the fact that it didn't carry enough energy for both of us to feel like it's good enough, then the problem is that the topic is not aligned with the bigger theme of the podcast. So, if we don't want to talk about the expands because it's not on point or on topic, well then what is on topic for the show then? Because until we come to that agreement or conclusion, then the show is gonna keep feeling like it's work, and I don't enjoy doing work outside of work. It's more work that I have to do that I'm unpaid for.
Mm-hmm.
And to the extent of something like that,
So the creative exploration is not interesting enough for you? Like that feels like work to you? Figuring out what this, like each
Figuring out
episode,
the show is fine, but
is giving us a clue as to what we're ultimately doing here. That's not appealing to you?
I've come to the conclusion of what we should do already. Maybe I haven't communicated to you, but
Well, what is that?
you know, that hold on, that work is sure, that work is interesting, but the post-production work that comes with it is not very interesting. And I think that's the other thing, like the fact that some of the technical post-production stuff you're not exposed to hinders us from understanding how much work there is involved. And I hate doing that work because it's very tedious. Like I love technology, but the fact that like doing some of the stuff behind the scene is just not fun on any level because you're not interacting with anybody. You're in a room by yourself. You want it to be as quiet as possible so you can listen to different. It's not very interesting at all. And that's one of the reasons. I don't know if you feel that when you were interviewing Scott, how he got so burnt out that it was like, you know, and he come from the world of video production, right? And neither of us have that experience. I think that's the other thing that kind of makes me uninterested in doing some of the stuff because conversation is fine. Recording is great. After the recording is over, that's where the kind of, to me, that's the real work begins, right? And that's one thing. Two, our lifestyle is so different. When you talk about someone viewing a video or how something is interesting on YouTube or something like that, to me, that is so not interesting because I search and Google and go on YouTube, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands a day. And so sometimes I'll click on a video by mistake and look and watch it for maybe 15 seconds. And then I go on to find something else. So when you try to measure somebody's engagement or interest or how well our show is doing based on some of those statistics, I mean, you can get a general feel, but I think it's you know, to me, it's not very interesting until we get like, you know, 1,000 followers and then it becomes interesting. But other than that, so it's like there's different aspects of just the way we understand how something is, and it just, you know, it's gonna keep happening until we can bridge that gap. And if we want to make the show more like discovery and self-reflection and all that, then it's a very different show, in my opinion.
Well, wasn't that the whole idea behind the Meta and Epic Meta podcast?
Yes, but I wanted to talk about like meta as in, you know, a different form of thinking about like when we talk about the Matrix or 1984 or Man's Search for Meaning, you know, that to me is the meta discussion, the layer on top or layer underneath whatever the thing that's happening, right? Because the thing that's happening is 1984, a guy just suffering and eventually, you know, succumb to the government. But the meta aspect is, you know, what does it mean to have a decent government? What is understanding of history? Like all that stuff to me is meta discussion. And I think it can mean so many different things that we never clearly define what we want to talk about. So for you, it's more like, what is podcasting? You know, what does it mean to do a show? I don't know, all the other aspect. And to me, it's interesting as well. But they're two different kind of meta. It's like we never defined it for ourselves. To you, we did as we continue moving on. But I never felt it until, you know, I felt like we're split. Half of the episode is one thing and half the other episode is the other thing. And along with that, like the post-production stuff, it just gets to be work.
All right, so let's talk about the post-production stuff. Okay, until this point, I didn't realize that it was as burdensome as you're relating it. So that's definitely an issue. I don't want you to have to feel like you're burdened in that way. Mm-hmm. So we can discuss that. I'm certainly open to discussing that. Maybe there's a solution there. You know, maybe I can take on some of that work, or maybe we just don't want to do it anymore. You know, I'm open to either one.
Yeah, both, right? And we can do both. So we learned about a friend of ours doing on a mobile app in Toastmaster, and I was theorizing like, what if you do some of that on, because I don't have that app. I don't want to use an app to do it.
Mhm.
To me, better productions come through the computer and the way we do stuff. Of course, the back end of that is that I have to do it. So if we want to split up, like let's say as a theory, we want to split up the work 50-50. So then, half the episodes you would do the post production, the other half I would do post production. So how would that work? Like, how would that mechanically work? So that's one way we can do it. The other way is we still do that, but also at the same time lower the count to, 2 episodes a month or something like that. Make it viable, or switch the topic to something that, when on the episodes that I'm interested in talking, I do the post production. Vice versa, something like that. So those are all options that I thought about in my head. Like I just never wrote it down um,
Well, do
to
you
make
want to
it.
continue doing the podcast?
I do and I don't. I think until we can define it in such a way that we both agree this is the topic of the podcast, forever.
Hmm.
Um, well then, yeah. But until we don't have a definition, then we can take a break until we can work that out off show.
Okay. You know, let's not definitively answer the question yet, but
Right, right,
but
right.
that's certainly I'm open to that.
Because to you, it's on track, right? But to me, it's off track.
No, it
To you,
feels
the
off
show is
track to
on.
me. Feels off track to
Okay,
me.
good. Okay, so because since episode one or any of the meta episode where we talk about our show itself, I never felt like we ever answer it. We just talk about it, but we never really come to a good answer. And
But
so it's
can't
like,
that be the focus of the show? Like, what is the answer to that question?
how long would that last? Because to me, it'll last 5 minutes. I mean, if it's the focus of the show is to, yeah,
But
to
we
me, it's
haven't
not a,
answered. It hasn't taken 5 minutes. It's taken almost 30 episodes.
because we never agree. To me, if we never come up with the answer, I wouldn't do the show.
Oh, I
It's
see.
very simple to me. Like
Okay.
that's not something that you can carry for hundreds of episodes.
Well,
To me, that's one question,
see,
one
to
minute
me, that is a
answer.
topic that we can carry for
Yeah,
hundreds of episodes, but only if we're both interested in doing that.
yeah,
I'm certainly
yeah,
not interested in doing that if you're not.
yeah.
So,
No, it doesn't make sense to me to cover something for so long without answering it. To me, everything has an answer, and it's pretty fast. I can tell you,
so
pretty fast.
okay, so that's a question. Um, Obviously, you and I have different perspectives on things, and to a
Mm,
certain extent, that makes the show interesting. But
right.
it also can become problematic if it's too much, I guess.
Hmm.
So the magic of the show, I guess, is in striking the balance between our different perspectives. But you know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but also pick a topic that can stay, right? Like if we talk about science fiction, to me that can stay forever because I can talk about science fiction to death and never get bored of it because I'm interested in that stuff for a long, long time. Whether a TV show or a movie is not good enough, it's regardless. The bigger scope of science fiction is very attractive to me. So any works in that realm will get my attention and will get me hyped up to consider it and analyze it, and I just go on for days. Whereas talking about what is podcasting, just dude, it's really straightforward. You just record stuff and push it on the air. It's really that simple. Now, how do you make a podcast interesting? How do you make a podcast, gain momentum? Sure, all that stuff makes a lot of sense to me, and I can talk about that too, but not on the same track. And so until we work out that topic to focus in on, it becomes really divided to me.
So
And I get
there's another issue here, and it's like, are we willing to? So the question is like, are we willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the other person? It feels like there's less and less willingness, perhaps on both of our parts, to do
yeah.
that, and
I
that's
say it's
creating an
both.
issue.
Right. I say it's both because the more I do it, the more I realize we need to define it.
So
So if
define
it's
it. Define it then. Okay. Make,
well, then I think we should talk about science fiction for the rest of our lives, and that's it. And if you're not encapsulate or interested in participating on that, then we don't do the episode.
yeah.
Right. So that's to me, it should be one or the other. But on certain episodes where it has, like when you bring up a topic and I say it doesn't have to do anything with us, that's because of the our disjointed or not unclear communication between the two of us.
So
And so
can you give an example of a topic that I chose that doesn't have to do with us?
the cartoon artist Crumb, for example,
Mhm.
it's like, how is that science fiction or meta in regards to humanity as far as like, any of like 1984, for example, is perfect. To me, is perfect because it has so many layers of components of humanity, plus it's, dystopian and sci-fi. Um, and
So
I don't
my
know. It was just
okay,
very,
my thinking
it's very
behind
different from Crumb.
okay, well, first of all, you didn't watch the movie that I wanted you to watch for that episode.
That's fine.
You watched some other video and then
Have you seen that video?
you refused to accept that the video that you watched was different than the actual movie that I suggested.
I'll accept it's different, but have you seen the video?
I looked at part of it, yeah.
Okay, and you say it's completely
It's
different.
completely different.
Okay, fine. I then I'll have to research and watch it. But to that
Well,
point,
no, I'm not done yet.
okay, go ahead.
The reason why I picked that movie was because it was very interesting to me when I watched it. And so just like 1984 has always captured my attention, just like A Christmas Carol has always captured. These are all topics that were interesting to me. Now, okay, I understand that they may or may not be interesting to you, but you pick topics that are interesting to you, like freakonomics, and I'm willing to explore whatever you pick too. With it doesn't make me angry.
But to me, freakonomics has to do
angry the topics that I pick.
Why? Right, because how does your topic go in line with the show?
Because you had discussed the layers of humanity.
Right.
In my mind, that
Christmas Carol do that?
What?
Christmas Carol does that for you?
Absolutely, it does.
Wow. Okay. To me, Christmas Carol is a children's novel, and it has nothing to do with humanity or meta topic or sci-fi.
We discussed it for almost an hour and a half, and there were lots of layers about humanity. We talked about how his father impacted him, and I mean how.
I was there for the show, so I'm good. You don't have to remind me.
Yeah.
Our communication, and the other thing is how you interpret something like that. I think that's the other thing. Like we never clearly define stuff, so it's never. Yeah, and I do certain episodes to appease you, and I never communicate with you, right? Like we never, when we pick a topic, we just do it mainly because I couldn't come up with a better answer for a topic of a show, and so when I do something, it confirms to you that it goes without show. And to me, it's not. But because I haven't come up with anything, I go and do it.
Yeah.
And then, it becomes kind of like a job.
You asked for topics for the show, and I gave you what I thought would be a good topic, and then you agreed to do it.
Yep.
If you didn't want to do it, you should have, voiced
and
that.
I blame that on me because I didn't communicate clearly that, this is not interesting. I don't want to do it. Because we're not like a big team, it's just the two of us. And I think to me, when I do that, it confirms, the more I do that over time, the more it, I guess, not boost, but basically reconfirm that the topics are, interested are in alignment with the podcast. And I blame that on me for doing that. But I think over time, our definition is not 100% in line with each other because of my behavior in agreeing with some of those episodes. But like there are definite episodes where it was great. Like this is what I want to talk about. But
Which ones?
some of it, The Matrix, 1984, to an extent, Conversation with Scott was like that, but not, it was an interview episode, so it's different.
Mhm.
There's a lot for me to learn from that, as far as, production and podcast quality and all this other stuff. So some of it, but I his show or the interview with his show was definitely like a different category than the other stuff that I enjoy, right? So
Mhm.
it's not the same. Even though I enjoy it, I could see there's two distinct category here, and that's yeah. Go full circle back to the fact that to me, like for example, Conversation with Scott has nothing to do with sci-fi at all. It's more about podcasting, right? And we to me we lump too many things into to the show, so it's like it's gonna keep manifesting over time. But yeah,
See, I don't have a problem with it, with the show being about more than
everything.
one. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think we need to focus it on one specific topic. And if we are to do that and the topic is science fiction, I don't know that I'm interested in doing that, to be honest.
so you don't think Freakonomics has anything to do with the meta aspects of humanity?
I didn't say that.
But why was it not? Well, okay.
No, I just brought that up as a topic that you specifically chose that I agreed to
Right.
do, and we discussed.
But I chose it because it has to do with the meta aspects, right? All this like stuff about people. And yes, it's not science fiction, but it's meta to me because we never see the connections
I,
until,
I'm not
certain things are
arguing
revealed.
that it isn't meta.
Okay.
What
So I am arguing that Christmas Carol and Crumb has nothing to do with the meta stuff.
Well, I
When
mean,
we talk about it.
I get that you don't see that, but we certainly, I
Yeah.
mean, I think the podcast episodes are evidence in and of themselves that we took it in a meta direction, both of them.
Mm.
Maybe not. I
Well,
don't remember the Crumb episode so well. I remember it being a little frustrating, but
yes.
but even that, even the fact that it got frustrating, I think took us in a meta direction. You know,
Yeah. I think for every episode that's frustrating or boring to me, you should do the post production. Or has the potential to, because I think the app is a very
what's
I
the
think it's
app?
a phone call.
What are you talking about?
So our friend from Toastmaster recorded a podcast using an app on the iPhone, and basically it's a phone call.
Hmm.
I forgot the name of it, but I have to look it up. But it sits on the Apple Store, and instead of using computer technology or whatever other equipment or technology that other podcasts use, this app basically makes a phone call and then just records it, and then it becomes a podcast show.
Can you edit it
So
though?
me
Can
with
anyone
that app,
can anyone
I have no
edit?
idea. I have no idea.
Mhm.
I have no idea how it works. I have no idea how it. To me, it sounds much simpler than what I'm doing, and
Well,
potentially,
I mean, can't we just make it as simple as possible?
I have no idea how to do that. But the point is, for any episodes where, because I don't know if you know this, but for any episodes that's boring, for like example, Crumb, I have to re-listen to it. That's why I skip certain things all the time, because it's literally a conversation I just had, and now I'm listening to it again, which I really hates doing. So you can do those post production for those podcasts,
Mhm.
and if you ask me how to do, I have no idea. We have to figure that out. For the next one, we can do
Well,
that.
how are you
But
editing them now? What are you using to do that?
Adobe Premiere, it runs on Windows,
Okay, so
and
that
it's
would have to be something I would have to get
pay.
for myself.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
How much is it?
but 20 to 40 to $50 a month. So
It's
it
a
depends on what you get.
subscription kind of thing.
Yeah, it used to be a static thing that you can download, but now it's just now everything is a subscription. So yes. On the thing that our friend Fani used is free. I think I'm not sure, but it's an option where you can help out with post production for every episode I don't like. like Crumb, for example, which is a pain to sit through. Our discussion on Star Trek was a little bit off too. However,
You
Star
talking about
Trek,
Wrath of Khan?
yeah, because I think if we talk about Wrath of Khan in regards to the fact that he's a super being from the future, that would have been a meta. But we talk about the movie itself, which is like not really meta. We just basically
Yes,
did
it
a
is.
review.
That's meta.
That's just a movie review on an episode. Now we talk about like he's a future being, and how do you deal with beings from a different,
We talked about the psychological
society.
motivations of the characters, and I mean, we took it meta. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't as interested
See,
in
I
that
think
one
the
as
real
compared to
issue is there are things that you're interested in,
right.
and there's things that I'm interested in, and I think there's an unwillingness on your part to explore something that you're not interested in.
But I did like 3 times already.
I
We
know,
talked about Star
but you're
Trek,
getting angry.
Wrath of Khan.
You're getting angry about
Of course, because to me it's not in track with the show, right? And that's the other problem. Your definition of the show is very broad. Like you're
it.
fine with going exploring, and to me that's fine if we dedicate it to it. But for the long term, then maybe I can be a guest for the podcast, but I would not continue exploring, every single topic there is in the world until we narrow it down. Like that to me, it makes it.
You wanted to do this podcast in the beginning. You
George, and it's fine to end things.
To do it,
and it's fine to end things. I don't know why you think just because
no,
you
I'm
start
okay
an
with
idea.
ending. I'm okay with ending it, but it seems like you're accusing me of like dragging you along with something that I mean I was
no, I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying
you and do it.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the time you spent, but I think that's what I've learned, right? Like defining something makes more sense to me, right? Because I thought I would be comfortable exploring, but over the episodes, maybe I like definition to be clear better, and I operate better with that than you do. Especially for something like this, to me, it's more interesting if it's more defined or at least narrow in topic, because I think we'll go way too broad on some of the stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we had agreed to do 2 more episodes after this one. Are you okay with doing those episodes, or do you want to make this our final episode?
Yeah, I don't really understand what's the difference between the difference. Like, why do you break it out like that? Like, is that
break what out?
That much? You broke out the 3 different episodes when it's really the same conversation.
You wanted to go to 30 episodes. So
it was just an idea, George. It's just not. It's not like everything I do. Like this is just a project between the two of us. There's no rules here. So
I don't know why you're thinking that I'm laying down rules.
Not everything I say has to be that way. Like I just say 30 because it's a nice even number. But,
okay, we don't have to do 30. We can stop at 28. That's fine with me.
I mean, do you think that the other things that you line up need more time to go over, or is it worth it to say one final?
I only stretched it out to 30 because it seemed like that's what you wanted to do. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to.
Yeah. No, I don't think we will cover anything new in all the other stuff that we want to talk about.
See, I think we would. I think this is a drawn out conversation that we're having. It's not like we're, I mean, I get that you're not willing to do that, and maybe I'm not either, but from my perspective, this is interesting. This will turn out to be an interesting episode, I think.
For you.
Well,
but I don't see. That's the other thing. So forget defining the show. Let's define the audience. We never answered that question either, because if we define the audience, exactly. If we define the audience, then we will know what is interesting to them, or we can theorize that. And the fact that we never answered that question, To me, it's like to you this is interesting, but I'm not clearly interested in this at all. And the other thing is I don't think anyone that would be in the audience find this interesting at all. But
Well,
you do.
I don't know.
So my idea.
Our interview with Scott Markowitz, he seemed to think
Forget
that.
Scott first. Forget Scott. Think
Why? Why
about
should I
the
forget
entire.
him? He thought that
He's
that we
one
had a
person.
winning.
Yes. Hold on a
He's
second.
one person,
Hold on.
but he's also.
Hold on 1 second. Define our audience then.
Why? Why should I have to?
If you don't know the audience, then who are you doing the podcast for?
People who think that what we think is interesting is interesting to
Yeah,
them.
no one. So that's the assumption. Like, why would you think this is interesting
Because it is.
to you? Like, do you not understand like how your world is centric on you? Like, that's not the entire world, right? You do understand
No.
that, right?
Tang, what the
So
fuck?
if you never
What the fuck?
if you never
You're
met
being
me,
an asshole here, Tang. Do
yes,
you understand
because
that?
here's the thing: if you were driving in a car, right,
Yeah.
and you never met me, right, and you're listening to radio
Mhm.
and you tune on this, would you keep listening to this?
Maybe.
I wouldn't.
I get that
Because
you
I'm-
wouldn't, and I get
Right.
that it irks you to be involved with this. So
No. The point is, this is for me and you very interesting because we're trying to work something out. But for a person who's listening, this is not interesting. So I'm
You
trying to
don't know
explain
that.
to you.
you don't know that.
Of course, I don't know that, but my assumption is it is true because
My assumption
show-
is the exact opposite, and I think
Right, the show
Scott
we get the
Markowitz's assumption would be the exact opposite too.
and that's fair and that's fine. But you have to explain to me who the audience is, and then I will join you, and keep moving forward. Because then I can have the expectation of this is the audience, and this is the show, and these are the topics. But until we do all that,
Mhm.
then I will keep having conflicts with you because I don't know what to agree on.
Okay,
Does that make sense to
I
you?
understand that.
Okay.
I don't really have an interest in defining our audience, and I'm okay with that being the reason why we stopped doing the podcast.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. Yeah, that makes sense. So you don't need a definition, but I do.
Mhm.
And then on the audience, and then on the I guess theme of the podcast as well, right? I want us to have a narrow theme, and you have a wider theme or a bigger scope.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think those makes me feel like work. It makes me feel like this is work and not fun. To you it's fun, but to me it's work. So that's the other problem. So until we clearly define it, then yeah, just one less. This episode will be our last, and we can have conversation off the air, and plan and work it through. But as far as like putting something out and recording it, to me, stuff like this is like a meeting in like an office with a bunch of people. Like, who would want to listen in on a meeting that has nothing to do with you? But apparently to you it's interesting. I wouldn't want to be in those meetings.
Well,
it has nothing to do with me.
It seems like our most listened to episodes were those types of episodes. Like, for instance,
I disagree, but okay.
Okay. Well, look at the statistics for the episode where George interviews Tang.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did that get a lot of traction, but the average listening time for that was on YouTube was like 14 minutes, something like that. It's far and away the episode that had the longest average listening to time.
Cool. I also disagree with our audience, but who cares? To me, the Freakonomics episode has the most download on Buzzsprout, right? And because the topic is really interesting.
But not on YouTube.
And it has. Is it? Okay. I don't know. I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't looked. So that's like the other thing. We can do another one to look at all that stuff. But I never track all that much, because I was waiting until we get to hundreds and thousands of followers or something significant to me. But yeah.
Well, so okay, I'll go back to what Scott Markowitz said. He said that we talked about this on the Scott Markowitz episode. Like, do you need to have a and narrow focus. And he said something along the lines of, if you want to build up an audience quickly, that's what you need to do. But he thought that our format was a winning format in the long run. It was a slow burn, I think he said.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, obviously, if it's agony for you, I don't want to I don't want to prolong that.
Yeah. And it's fine having these conversations. It's the post-production that's where I have to listen to it again. And then there's two things you have to listen for. Once you have to listen, well, actually, let me rephrase. There's only one thing you have to listen for, and that is you're listening to sounds. But the problem is I'm a human being, and I understand words. So listening to sounds means I have to listen to conversation again. The feeling is very strange because you're trying to listen for technical stuff, and then I don't know if you know, but I do both post process. Like I click a button that suppress noise, and I do all this stuff. So I'm trying to listen for like the improvements. I cut out things. I just do like minutia of like little tiny different stuff. And the problem is, since I understand words, I'll relive this experience multiple times, sometimes 2 or 3 times. And it's just aggravating. So that's the other thing why it gets more burdensome as we go on and on certain topics. So
okay,
yeah.
Well, I have no desire to burden you.
Cool.
And I have no desire to keep to keep something going that doesn't need to keep going. So
yeah.
So let's just figure out here.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you want this to be our final episode, but you're leaving the door a little bit open to perhaps a future episode if there's something that we both agree on. And is that true, or do you want to just have it?
Like, no, I think are there things you want to talk about that we haven't covered? Like, you broke it down in such a format, but frankly, I think we cover it. Like, until we come up with good definition or agreement. Like, to you, we have a good definition of our audience. To you, we have a good definition of this show or the scope. I mean, if those questions are answers, then we're good to go. Because until we find something where we both agree on it, then yeah. I mean, is there anything left to discuss, or like you feel like we left out?
I don't know. Is there anything you feel like we left out?
No, I think we did our best. I don't think I think really reviewing some of like the best episodes, but I think we already talked about them too. It's definitely the good ones are really good. I don't know how to even if they don't have good statistics on whatever platform we released them on. The good one were very enjoyable because, it was actually, to me, it was in alignment with what we discussed about. But I feel that, sometimes, yeah. Other than that, yeah, maybe for next project, or if you ever do something like this again, see if you can get some experience of the post-production stuff. Because that will make everything on the same page. But yeah.
Okay. Well, would you say this project was a success ultimately, or a failure?
I'd say it's a success. Yeah, because the fact that we never define it or come to agreement and try to work it out on the air. This is like nobody have the bravery to do that. Most of the time they'll do ridiculous amount of pre-planning and sitting in a room and draw up stuff, and who knows how long that takes. So the fact that we both have the willingness and bravery to do it and actually discuss it, to me, that's a success because we have no budget. We're 2 people. We're doing it over the air, like remotely. This is like crazy hurdles to overcome. It's very simple in regards to like, yeah, I'm just having conversation with a friend and record it. But on the other stuff, we did a lot. We have a website or a feed link. I had to figure out a lot of stuff that I didn't know I had to figure out. And part of my goal was to learn about Premiere, which is the software I use. So I kind of learned enough to know that it is way beyond like some of the things I need to know. So I got enough out of learning in regards to the technology that I wanted to learn. So I'm pretty happy on that front as well. Even though sometimes it's just like beyond me, and that's fine. I now know the expertise involved when someone push out something. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like why I like it so much, or how good the show is
Mhm.
compared to something we do. So stuff like that.
So it was a learning
To me,
experience.
yeah, to me it's a very successful learning experience because now I know that if I ever do anything creative, then me and whoever's involved with like the creative team better come up with a structure or a good definition. I'm not good with vague definitions
Mhm.
or free or bigger scope stuff. Like at least I learned that. And I learned about you too. So it's like how you perceive or how you interact with the universe at large. Like you're very open and you're very undefined. The more undefined something is, the more I guess you're more comfortable with it. Um, Especially with like ongoing discussion kind of thing. Whereas I don't like that so much. But while I'm intrigued by it, maybe listening to it or something, but not doing both the discussion and then like the post production on it too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I
What
mean,
about you? What
I,
did you learn?
well, it's not so much about what I learned. I think it's just I enjoy collaborating. I enjoy the content creation aspect of it, the creativity aspect of it. I mean, obviously, my forte doesn't extend to the post production stuff. Although I'd be willing to learn to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't really. I don't gravitate to that naturally. It's more about the creativity and the collaboration aspect that drives me. So it really doesn't matter to me so much about the focus of our focus or our definition so much as it's a forum for creativity and collaboration. Um, and I enjoyed doing it up and
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing, even this episode, even the episodes that didn't go well. I appreciated the fact that that this project exists and that we were able to do what we did together. So I'm really certainly no hard feelings. I
Yeah.
apologize if I ever rubbed you the wrong way or you felt burdened. I'm sorry if I put you in that position.
No, it makes sense. It's just bad communication on my part, and just working with a team. Sometimes you have to explain some of that stuff, and because we come from a very different technical background, and I never share with you like if this was a studio, right? Like if this
Mhm.
was a building, and we're in the building and working together, you would have been exposed to that stuff,
Yeah,
and the fact that this is like a I push like the fact that it's over the platform and over the environment that it makes it very difficult to communicate because there are things I don't share. I typically just don't say, and it becomes a problem. But if you were working in like a building and this is like your job, like if you think of all the podcasts you like, that is that person's job.
yeah, sure.
They do that all day long. They don't have these problems because they do it and they explain it to each other, that kind of thing.
Right.
So
And
yeah.
even if it becomes a problem for them, they're getting paid to deal with that problem. So
Yeah.
it's not a.
Usually you can hire somebody to fix something. It's not very difficult. But yeah, I enjoy it too, and I appreciate your time and I guess willingness because a lot of it was undefined. But to you, it was a pleasure because you like being undefined. So I think if it continues on, you should find I don't want to say an essay format, but perhaps you and another creative person can do like an essay about something and then talk about it. I think that would be a good format because it's very open.
Well, I
On
have a history of burning out other people that I creatively collaborate with. Um, like one time,
on what?
I don't know why. I don't know why. There's something
No,
about
no,
me.
like was it like for school, like in college,
No.
or are you talking about something
So
else?
so there's a few different examples, but I guess the classic example is my cousin and I. We worked on a story together where like I would write it. We published it through email, so we had like an email distribution list, and so he would write an episode, and then I'd write an episode that started from where his episode
Hmm.
left off, and so the
Yeah.
story sort of was open ended, and but we'd alternate back and forth, and so I loved it. Like I couldn't wait to like read his episode. I couldn't wait to write my episode and publish my episode and get the feedback, and it he eventually started to lose interest in it, like,
Mm.
and I couldn't understand why. Like it made
Well,
me,
did the story go anywhere?
yeah. I mean, in my mind, it kept expanding and expanding and becoming more
That's
interesting
probably why.
and layered and like I loved that how it was just growing and growing and growing and becoming more and more interesting in my mind.
Hmm.
And the fact that he didn't see it that way made me at the time very angry.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that might have fed into the negative feedback loop that ended it. There's been other
Yeah.
projects where I've worked with other people, and it always feels like I want to take it to the next level, and then and they don't, and that
Well,
so
to
I
me,
don't want to get into that.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the same
with our
problem. That,
experience here, like
hmm.
I have those prior experiences in my mind, and I definitely, the impression I got was that like I was becoming burdensome to the other person,
No,
and
I think it's
I
both, right? It's
well, I
like,
definitely didn't want that to repeat itself in our
yeah.
situation. So
Well, the same problems that you had, like the project with your cousin, is the same problems we have here, right? Which is we don't work in a physical building and actually communicate as if it was our primary job. Because if you were working in a team and it is your primary job and you get paid for, your cousin would have shared some of those feelings with you. But because it's over email and whatever, remote or any kind of like side project, the timeline is very different, and then the communication is very different, and that those things are not shared well over electronic or just anything like that. So yeah, I
yeah.
think it's the same problem that come over time, and
For some reason,
it's
though, I'm willing to keep going. I'm not saying that
right.
that's the case necessarily in this
Yeah,
situation, because I see that we're coming to an agreement here.
yeah,
But the pattern
yeah.
has been in the past that I was just willing to keep going and going and going and take it wherever it led,
Yeah.
and the other
You can
person
keep
was not.
we and off the air we can plan it too. If you want to do post production and we can keep talking, that's great. Especially with movies and TVs, I can tell you I can consume them and feel free to jump on the show and share my thoughts and ideas about it. But for like work stuff, like reading a book or something, unless it's very short, it becomes too much of my drain on my time and energy. Whereas I
Hey,
enjoy doing other stuff.
yeah,
So
no,
yeah.
no, no. I mean, look, with this project, with
Hmm.
the Epic Meta podcast, I was willing to put in as much effort as you wanted me to. I wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't my idea to produce an
Yeah.
episode every week. I mean, I think that was your idea. I was, but I was happy to go along with that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I was pushing you to produce an episode every week. I don't think
Yeah.
that was my energy.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
That's good. No, that's a lot. That's
So
a lot to learn.
you don't think this was interesting? You don't think this episode
Me too.
was interesting?
It's interesting to us. Like that's like again,
Well,
like it's interesting to
let's
us.
see.
It's not interesting.
You don't know that it's not interesting to other people. You're just assuming.
I assume that, and I until it gets like a million hits or something insane, it's not gonna prove me wrong.
Well,
And
every
that's the
person
problem
that
with
I've had like personal contact with and discussed episodes with, so like Scott, let's say, and a few friends of mine who have listened to episodes, and my sister, they've all said that it seems like they're all saying that the most interesting episodes are the ones where like our personalities are revealed through the process.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it
yeah,
makes sense, but you gotta understand that's a very small audience,
not
and
necessarily.
they all know you. So it's like, compared to the rest of the world or the internet, they're gonna have no qualm saying this show sucks. So you gotta pay attention to who's talking to you and giving you feedback. Especially the more stranger it is, the better. So if it's like a random person on the internet giving you a feedback, it's gonna be true because they have no accountability to you. Don't care about your feelings. It's gonna be this show is terrible.
Well, yeah,
And
and
I'm
Scott Markowitz thought
so
that
it's
our
because he knows us and he's a nice person. Like
so
you gotta understand that.
I don't know. I don't think he was just humoring us. I think he was
It's
seemed like
not
he was
humoring.
being.
It's just
I
yeah,
think
and maybe he
it's
is interested in that stuff, but he's one person, and I can tell you,
one
the
person
wider
with a
audience.
podcasting background and a video, media background. So I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like his his opinion is completely unformed or uninformed.
Yes, but have you met the internet, George? I don't think you understand all the other stuff that's out there. Um,
Well, again,
that to me is way more interesting than this.
well
So
again, you never seem to care about our traction with the audience anyway. And I only did to the extent that I found the statistics interesting. I mean, I much
yeah,
more enjoyed the act of creating episodes than I mean
yeah.
that was more always more important to me than I mean
Okay,
feedback
good.
is interesting and and it does create some sort of dopamine hit, but
Yeah,
that that's not that was never my primary aim or I don't know, maybe
cool.
it was a shared aim. I don't know, I just enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah, that's good.
But I
That's good.
don't enjoy it if I'm being burdensome to some, or if the process is
Yeah,
being
yeah.
burdensome. So
Yeah, and I was thinking, off the air, like before the show. I think even before we did the last expense episode, like if there's a way, because I felt that energy, like you talk about you want to dive deeper and keep doing stuff, and I don't want to hinder that either, right? And I was thinking and planning and theorizing in my head if there's a way for you to continue on with like another guest or another host, because that'd be great. If you can keep that drive going and make the show, become something else, right? Like for us, or at least for me, for this first 30 or 20 episode, it's science fiction and humanity. But if you manage to find another co-host and drive it and keep it going, then it can be like another thing for the next 30 episode and keep it going, right? It could be anything else. And if I drop off, it's like a rotating cast with like band members. Like I don't know, you ever rock music do this. Even rap stars do it too, where it's like they just recast lead singers or recast people, right? And it keeps going, even though it's carry the same name. It's different people in that band, and the music generally the same. Some of it's different, but if you can keep that going, that would be great. And then you can maintain your interest in it and don't lose that energy. But yeah,
there's something about the collaboration aspect that makes it sort of interesting to me, like that adds another layer to it. I don't know if I would be
yeah,
able to sustain it just on my own or with random,
yeah,
where I was a lead and had guests.
yeah,
But it's something to think about, I
yeah.
guess.
Cool stuff. We'll see how many hits this episode gets, but yeah.
So, okay. So let's definitive it. This is our final episode then.
Yes, I would say this is the final episode, because I think we answered all the questions that we want to answer. I don't feel like we left anything out, because I'm looking at some of the notes that you have for other ones too. It's like I think we
Okay.
cover all of it. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure working with you, Tang. I enjoyed it. I'm glad we did this. Definitely. Because,
Me too. Yeah, me too.
yeah, I mean, all enterprises are not without their struggles and rough points.
Hmm.
And, if anything's worth doing, it's worth putting effort into. So,
Yeah, and I say we same thing. I've learned a lot, and it just for a 2-man team with no budget, we did decent. Because if you look at like anything else, it's usually, I mean, honestly, to me, Scott could have gone further because he only had his format for interviewing. Yeah, it's a matter of networking and finding people, but there's a lot of people out there doing lots of different interesting projects. So, if for our format with what we're doing, I think that's a good is a good timeline. So, I congratulate to us, even though we ended I guess abruptly or anything, but yeah, it was a pleasure, and I think we did more than we bargained for. So. To me, this is an achievement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, definitely.
Cool stuff.
All
You
right.
want to say anything to our audience?
Well, thank you for listening, whoever you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, to the future audience, who knows where we end up. So you can look for us in other podcasts and whatnot too. And wherever you find us, you can leave comments and we'll respond to them. Because most of our accounts or anything is all virtual, so we'll be in touch, and they're all they'll be alive, for lack of a better word. They'll be all the accounts will be alive for foreseeable future. There's no I don't know how to describe it. There's no button that turn off and then we'll disappear into the ether. We are, but
so
it's gonna be all alive.
Aren't you paying some amount of money for that?
So the smallest form of paying just to do the hosting is like very, very cheap. If you don't upload any new material and just to keep it alive is very cheap. It's like $3 a month or something crazy. There's also a free version too, but it's not about them holding the information. It's about them. It's about you uploading more information.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have anything else to upload. It's like similar to the email account. It's just out there. Like the YouTube channel. So in the foreseeable future, whoever come across this can, interact with us still. So
okay.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty flexible, because if you want to pick it back up, you can, right? If you find other co-hosts and if you have a different scope, it's very feasible to do it.
What if you find another co-host?
Unlikely. If I come onto a team that have like a different scope or format and they do all that other stuff, then yeah, it's possible. But I won't leverage this name on that theme discussion. And it won't be epic, or like it won't be the same, like this is definitely just like, your show. I won't ruin the band by bringing on like a new singer or musician or whatever. It's just not the that sound that you want to save. I'm gonna not disturb it. So I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, sometimes band will ruin their name, right? Like I don't want to do that. So this is definitely just when it's a different host, choose a different name for me. But for you, you could do that.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Why don't we end it here?
Goodbye. All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you for listening and supporting us. And yeah, we'll see you if we see you.
Have a good life.
Hey there, listeners. Thank you for supporting us thus far. How are you currently enjoying our show? Please share your thoughts with us through Twitter or YouTube. As we're a newer podcast, maintaining our vitality is the utmost important to us. Part of that process is to build community, but most importantly is to deliver content that you enjoy. So in order for us to do those things effectively, please share with us your ideas and or requests, and of course, how you receive the show so far. Perhaps we can do a follow-up conversation to a topic that we've covered not in depth enough, or cover a new topic that you find interesting. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share with someone that you think would also enjoy the show. And of course, as always, be good and be well. Take care.